Dr. Emily Carter had always been fascinated by the mysteries of the past. As a paleontologist, she spent her days uncovering secrets buried deep beneath the Earth's surface, clues to life that existed millions of years ago. Her passion wasn't just about digging up old bones. It was about piecing together stories that connected humanity to its ancient roots. For years, she traveled across deserts, mountains, and forests in search of these hidden treasures, driven by an unrelenting curiosity. One summer afternoon, while exploring a remote stretch of land she'd inherited from her late grandfather, Emily stumbled upon something extraordinary. The land itself wasn't much to look at, a barren expanse of sand and rock baking under the scorching sun, but something caught her eye. Embedded in the ground were faint impressions of what looked like fossilized remains. At first glance, they seemed ordinary, but as Emily knelt down and brushed away layers of dirt, her heart began to race. These weren't just random fragments. They were part of something bigger, more significant than anything she'd ever encountered before. The next few weeks, Emily meticulously excavated the area, carefully extracting each fragment with precision and care. What she uncovered left her breathless. Perfectly preserved fossils of creatures that roamed the Earth during the Mesozoic era. Among them were rare specimens never documented by scientists, species that could rewrite textbooks and reshape our understanding of prehistoric ecosystems. Every new discovery felt like opening a time capsule, revealing glimpses of a world long gone but still alive in the rocks beneath her feet. For Emily, this site wasn't just a career-defining moment. It was a dream come true. She imagined how these fossils could inspire future generations, spark new scientific breakthroughs, and deepen humanity's connection to the planet's history. She envisioned museums filled with exhibits showcasing these incredible finds, classrooms buzzing with excitement as students learned about the ancient creatures that once called this place home. But little did she know, her dreams were about to collide head-on with someone else's ambitions. Unbeknownst to Emily, developers had already set their sights on the very same stretch of land. A local homeowners association, HOA, had purchased large portions of the surrounding property with plans to build a luxury condo complex called Serenity Ridge. To them, the desert was nothing more than empty space, a blank slate waiting to be transformed into profit. They saw dollar signs where Emily saw history, and their vision couldn't have been more different from hers. The HOA executives boasted about how Serenity Ridge would bring jobs, tourism, and modern living to the area. Flyers advertised sleek architecture, infinity pools, and panoramic views of the untouched landscape. Investors poured money into the project, eager to capitalize on the promise of upscale suburban living. Construction crews arrived within months, ready to turn blueprints into reality. And yet, not once did anyone stop to consider what might lie beneath the surface, or who might already call this land theirs. When Emily first noticed bulldozers rumbling toward her dig site, she thought it was some kind of mistake. Surely, no one would knowingly destroy such a valuable piece of history, right? She approached the workers, explaining her work and showing them some of the fossils she'd unearthed. But instead of sympathy or interest, she was met with indifference. One worker shrugged and said, "We're just doing our job. If you've got a problem, take it up with the HOA." Confused and alarmed, Emily reached out to the HOA directly, hoping to reason with them. She sent emails, made phone calls, and even visited their offices in person, armed with photographs and detailed reports highlighting the scientific importance of her findings. But every attempt ended in frustration. The HOA representatives listened politely but dismissed her concerns, insisting that all necessary permits had been obtained and construction would proceed as planned. As the days passed, Emily watched helplessly as heavy machinery tore through the fragile terrain. Each scrape of the bulldozer blades felt like a punch to the gut, knowing that priceless artifacts were being destroyed forever. She tried everything she could think of to stop them, writing letters to local officials, reaching out to news outlets, even setting up makeshift barriers around her dig site. But none of it worked. The wheels of progress kept turning, indifferent to her pleas. Despite the mounting challenges, Emily refused to give up. This wasn't just about fossils anymore, it was about standing up for something greater than herself. Deep down, she knew she couldn't fight this battle alone. She needed allies, resources, and a plan. Little did she realize, however, that her struggle was only beginning, and the road ahead would test her resolve in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The sound of bulldozers echoed across the desert like an ominous drumbeat, each rumble sending a fresh wave of dread through Emily's chest. She stood at the edge of her dig site, clutching a handful of fossil fragments in one hand and a notebook filled with meticulous sketches in the other. Her heart sank as she watched the massive machines carve into the earth just yards away from where she'd spent months uncovering history. Dust clouds billowed into the air, obscuring the horizon and choking the life out of the once pristine landscape. Emily couldn't believe this was happening. How could anyone destroy something so precious without even pausing to consider its value? She had spent countless hours under the blistering sun, painstakingly brushing away layers of dirt to reveal the ancient treasures hidden beneath. Each fossil told a story of creatures that roamed the earth millions of years ago, of ecosystems long forgotten, of connections between past and present that no human-made structure could ever replicate. And now, all of it was being reduced to rubble. Desperate for answers, Emily approached the construction crew again. This time she carried photographs of her discoveries, clear evidence of the scientific significance of the site. "Do you see this?" she asked, holding up a picture of a nearly complete skeleton embedded in the rock. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime find. It's not just some random piece of land, it's a window into our planet's history." But the workers barely glanced at the photo before turning back to their tasks. One of them muttered something about deadlines while another shook his head dismissively. "Look, lady," said the foreman, crossing his arms over his chest. "We're just following orders. If you've got a problem, take it up with the higher-ups." Higher-ups. That phrase became a recurring theme in Emily's conversations with the construction team. They weren't making decisions, they were simply doing what they were told. Frustrated but undeterred, Emily decided to go straight to the source, the Homeowners Association, HOA, responsible for the Serenity Ridge project. Surely, if she explained the situation clearly enough, they would understand the gravity of what was at stake. The next morning, Emily drove to the HOA's headquarters, a sleek office building located on the outskirts of town. Inside, the atmosphere was polished and professional, a stark contrast to the rugged terrain where her fossils lay buried. She was greeted by a receptionist who directed her to a conference room, where two executives, Mr. Grayson and Ms. Langley, waited to hear her case. Emily took a deep breath and launched into her presentation. She showed them slides of the fossils she'd uncovered, shared details about their potential impact on paleontology, and emphasized the importance of preserving such a unique site. "This isn't just about me or my research," she said earnestly. "It's about protecting a piece of our collective heritage, a legacy that belongs to everyone." To her dismay, Mr. Grayson and Ms. Langley listened with blank expressions, offering only vague responses when pressed for feedback. "We appreciate your passion, Dr. Carter," Ms. Langley finally said, leaning back in her chair. "But we've already invested heavily in this project. Stopping now would cause significant financial losses, not to mention disappoint hundreds of families who've purchased units in Serenity Ridge." Her words hit Emily like a punch to the gut. Financial losses? Disappointed families? Was that really all they cared about? She tried to argue further, pointing out that federal laws existed specifically to protect sites of historical and scientific importance, but Mr. Grayson cut her off mid-sentence. "All necessary permits have been secured," he said firmly, "and unless you can provide concrete proof that those permits are invalid, there's nothing more to discuss." Emily left the meeting feeling defeated but also angry. Angry at the HOA for prioritizing profit over preservation. Angry at herself for not acting sooner to secure legal protection for the site. Most of all, though, she was angry because she knew deep down that the battle wasn't over. It was only beginning. Back at the dig site, Emily found solace in the quiet moments when the bulldozers paused for the night. Under the cover of darkness, she worked tirelessly to document everything she could, photographing fossils, sketching layouts, and recording GPS coordinates. Every fragment mattered now, every detail counted. She reached out to colleagues in the scientific community, sharing updates and seeking advice. Some offered words of encouragement. Others warned her that taking on a powerful organization like the HOA would be an uphill battle. As word spread about Emily's plight, curious locals began showing interest in her work. A retired geology professor named Harold stopped by one afternoon bringing along a thermos of coffee and a listening ear, Togi J. Emily knew she couldn't face this battle alone. Standing up to a powerful organization like the HOA required more than just passion. It demanded expertise, strategy, and resources she didn't yet possess. That's when she turned to Marcus Lane, a seasoned environmental lawyer known for his work on cases involving land preservation and conservation. Emily had heard about Marcus through a colleague who described him as the kind of guy who fights tooth and nail for what's right. Desperate for help, she reached out to him, hoping he'd take her case. Marcus agreed to meet with Emily at the dig site. As they walked through the area together, Emily explained everything: the fossils she'd discovered, the significance of the site, and the looming threat posed by the Serenity Ridge project. She showed him photographs, maps, and journal entries detailing months of painstaking work. Marcus listened intently, occasionally jotting notes in a small leather-bound notebook. When Emily finished speaking, there was a long pause before Marcus finally spoke. "This is big," he said, looking around at the barren landscape with newfound respect. "Really big. If we play our cards right, we might have a shot at stopping them." His words gave Emily a flicker of hope, but Marcus was quick to temper her optimism. He explained that taking on the HOA wouldn't be easy. They were backed by deep pockets, influential connections, and teams of high-powered lawyers ready to defend their interests. Still, Marcus believed they had one crucial advantage: the law. Federal regulations existed to protect sites of historical and scientific importance, and if Emily could prove that the HOA had violated those laws, they stood a chance. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Marcus dove headfirst into research. They combed through stacks of documents: environmental impact reports, zoning permits, geological surveys, searching for any evidence that could strengthen their case. It wasn't glamorous work. Hours were spent poring over dense legal jargon and deciphering technical data. But every detail mattered, and Emily approached it with the same determination she brought to her fossil excavations. One breakthrough came when Marcus uncovered a critical piece of information. The HOA had failed to conduct a proper environmental assessment before beginning construction. Under federal law, such assessments were mandatory for large-scale development projects, especially in areas suspected of containing significant natural or cultural resources. The omission was glaring and potentially illegal. "Here's where we hit them," Marcus said, tapping the relevant section of a report with his pen. "They skipped this step entirely. That's negligence, plain and simple. But proving negligence wasn't enough. To build a strong case, they needed to demonstrate that the HOA had knowingly ignored the potential presence of fossils. This meant finding concrete evidence linking the developers to knowledge of the site's scientific value. It was a daunting task, but Emily refused to give up. Meanwhile, the situation on the ground grew increasingly dire. The bulldozers continued, their relentless advance inching closer to the most valuable parts of the dig site. Each day brought fresh destruction, leaving Emily feeling powerless and heartbroken. She tried to focus on gathering evidence, but it was hard to concentrate when she could hear the roar of machinery in the background, erasing history with every passing moment. Determined to raise awareness, Emily began reaching out to local media outlets. She sent press releases, shared photos of the fossils, and invited journalists to visit the site. At first, responses were lukewarm. Some reporters expressed interest but ultimately decided the story wasn't newsworthy enough. Others dismissed it outright, assuming it was just another clash between scientists and developers, a tale as old as time. But then Rachel Harper, a tenacious investigative journalist from a regional newspaper, stepped in. Rachel had a reputation for uncovering hidden truths and shining a light on injustices, no matter how complex or controversial. After meeting with Emily and touring the dig site, Rachel became convinced that this was a story worth telling. She wrote an article titled "Fossils versus Fortunes: The Battle Over Our Hidden Past," which painted a vivid picture of Emily's struggle and highlighted the broader implications of the HOA's actions. The article struck a chord with readers. Letters poured into the newspaper's office, many expressing outrage over the destruction of such a scientifically important site. Social media buzzed with hashtags like "Save Our History" and "Protect the Past," drawing attention not only locally, but across the country. Environmental groups and paleontology organizations rallied behind Emily, offering support and amplifying her message. Encouraged by the growing momentum, Emily and Marcus filed a lawsuit against the HOA and its parent company. The complaint accused them of violating multiple environmental protection laws, failing to conduct proper assessments, and deliberately ignoring evidence of the site's significance. The filing sparked immediate backlash from the HOA, whose lawyers fired back with threats of countersuits and accusations of hindering economic progress. As the legal battle heated up, tensions escalated both in court and outside it. Protesters gathered near the construction site, holding signs and chanting slogans. Some condo buyers who had invested in Serenity Ridge began questioning whether they wanted to live in a place tainted by controversy. Even local politicians started weighing in, some siding with Emily, while others defended the HOA's right to develop the land. Through it all, Emily remained steadfast. She attended every court hearing, answered every question from reporters, and kept working tirelessly to preserve what was left of her dig site. Nights were sleepless, days exhausting, but she found strength in the growing community of supporters standing beside her. One evening, as Emily sat alone at her desk surrounded by piles of paperwork, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with uncertainty and resistance. But for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope, not because she thought winning would be easy, but because she realized she wasn't fighting alone anymore. People cared, and sometimes that made all the difference. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Emily sat at a small table alongside Marcus Lane, her lawyer, clutching a folder filled with documents that represented months of hard work. Across the aisle, the HOA's legal team occupied a much larger space, their polished suits and confident demeanor exuding an air of authority. To Emily, they seemed untouchable, powerful figures who spoke in jargon and wielded influence like weapons. But she reminded herself why she was here. Not for herself, but for the fossils, for history, and for the countless people who deserve to know the truth about this land. The trial began with opening statements. Marcus stood up first, his voice steady and commanding. He painted a vivid picture of the fossil site as a treasure trove of scientific discovery, a place where ancient life whispered secrets across millions of years. "This isn't just dirt and rocks," he said, gesturing toward photos of the fossils displayed on a projector screen behind him. "It's a record of our planet's past, one that belongs not only to us, but to future generations." He went on to outline how the HOA had violated federal laws designed to protect such sites. He pointed out the glaring absence of proper environmental assessments and accused the developers of reckless disregard for the land's historical value. His words resonated with the packed gallery, where supporters of Emily's cause sat shoulder to shoulder nodding in agreement. When it was the HOA's turn, their lead attorney, a sharp-tongued woman named Patricia Klein, took center stage. She didn't deny the allegations outright. Instead, she framed them as minor oversights in an otherwise well-intentioned project. "Serenity Ridge is about progress," she declared, pacing confidently in front of the judge. "It's about creating jobs, boosting the local economy, and providing families with affordable housing options. Yes, mistakes were made. But does that warrant halting an entire development? Does one person's hobby outweigh the needs of hundreds?" Her argument struck a nerve. Some members of the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats while others whispered among themselves. Emily clenched her fists under the table, fighting back frustration. How could anyone reduce her life's work to a mere hobby? Still, she forced herself to stay calm. This wasn't just about winning arguments. It was about presenting facts. Over the next several days, expert witnesses testified on both sides. Paleontologists, geologists, and archaeologists called by Emily's team described the extraordinary significance of the fossil site. One professor compared it to finding a lost chapter of Earth's history, emphasizing that similar discoveries had led to Nobel Prize-winning research. Another witness highlighted the rarity of the specimens found there, stating that some species appeared to be entirely new to science. On the other side, the HOA paraded engineers, economists, and real estate experts who argued that stopping construction would devastate the community. They presented charts showing projected job losses, revenue shortfalls, and financial hardships faced by condo buyers who had already invested thousands of dollars in Serenity Ridge units. Their message was clear. Progress couldn't wait. As the weeks dragged on, Emily felt like she was living two separate lives. By day, she navigated the sterile confines of the courtroom, listening intently as lawyers debated technicalities and judges asked probing questions. The courtroom was silent as Judge Harris leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Emily sat at the edge of her seat, her hands clasped tightly together, her heart pounding so loudly she wondered if everyone in the room could hear it. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, the decision that would determine the fate of her fossil site and the Serenity Ridge project. For weeks, the trial had swung back and forth like a pendulum, with each side presenting arguments, evidence, and counter-arguments. Now the judge's words would tip the scales one way or the other. Judge Harris began speaking slowly, his tone measured but firm. "This case is not just about property development or personal interests," he said, looking around the packed courtroom. "It is about how we as a society choose to balance progress with preservation. It is about respecting the laws designed to protect our shared heritage." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "After careful consideration of the evidence presented, I find sufficient grounds to issue a preliminary injunction halting all construction activities within 500 meters of Dr. Carter's dig site, pending further investigation." The room erupted into a mix of reactions. Supporters cheered quietly, exchanging hopeful glances, while members of the HOA's legal team exchanged nervous looks. Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was short-lived. She knew this wasn't the end. It was only a temporary reprieve. The fight to fully protect the site was far from over. Outside the courthouse, chaos unfolded. Reporters swarmed Emily and Marcus, bombarding them with questions. Cameras flashed relentlessly as voices called out from every direction. "Dr. Carter, what does this mean for your research?" one journalist asked. "Do you think this ruling will stop the HOA permanently?" another pressed. Overwhelmed but determined, Emily took a deep breath and stepped forward. "This isn't just my victory," she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind around her. "It's a victory for science, for history, and for anyone who believes we have a responsibility to protect the treasures of our past." As news of the injunction spread, public opinion shifted dramatically. Protesters gathered outside the partially built condos, holding banners that read, "Fossils first," and "Stop destroying our legacy." Local businesses began pulling sponsorships from Serenity Ridge, citing ethical concerns. Even some investors distanced themselves, fearing association with a project now synonymous with controversy. Contractors abandoned the site en masse, unwilling to risk tarnishing their reputations by working on tainted land. For the HOA, the consequences were devastating. Their executives scrambled to salvage the situation, issuing vague apologies and promising to reassess their approach. But the damage was done. Leaked emails mocking the fossils had painted them as callous and indifferent, and the public wasn't willing to forgive. Sales for Serenity Ridge plummeted, leaving hundreds of units unsold. Contractors abandoned the project en masse, unwilling to risk tarnishing their reputations by working on tainted land. Meanwhile, Emily threw herself back into her work with renewed energy. With construction halted, she finally had time to focus on documenting and preserving the fossils without constant fear of destruction. Volunteers poured in from across the country, students, retirees, amateur paleontologists, all eager to help excavate and catalog the remains. Together, they uncovered even more incredible specimens, including a nearly complete skeleton of a previously unknown dinosaur species. Each discovery fueled Emily's determination to turn the site into something greater than herself. But the fight wasn't over yet. While the injunction provided temporary relief, Emily knew she needed a permanent solution. She and Marcus worked tirelessly to gather additional evidence proving the HOA's deliberate negligence. Late one night, buried deep in documents, they stumbled upon a game-changing revelation. Geological surveys commissioned by the HOA itself months before construction began had flagged signs of potential fossil deposits. Not only had the developers ignored these warnings, but internal memos revealed active attempts to suppress the information. "This is it," Marcus said, slamming the folder shut. "This proves they knew exactly what they were doing, and tried to cover it up." Armed with this new evidence, Emily and Marcus filed a motion requesting summary judgment, a legal maneuver that would bypass the need for a full trial and rule in their favor, based on the overwhelming facts. The HOA's lawyers fought back fiercely, arguing that the surveys were inconclusive and didn't justify halting an entire development. But Judge Harris saw through their arguments. In a scathing written opinion, he condemned the HOA's actions as a blatant disregard for both the law and the ethical stewardship of our natural heritage. The final verdict came weeks later. Standing once again in the crowded courtroom, Emily listened as Judge Harris delivered his decision. "This court finds the defendants guilty of multiple violations of environmental protection laws," he announced. "Furthermore, I order the immediate dismantling of all structures encroaching on Dr. Carter's dig site and designate the surrounding area as a federally protected zone under the jurisdiction of the Department of Natural Resources." Cheers erupted in the gallery, echoing off the walls like thunder. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she hugged Marcus tightly. They had done it. They had won. The HOA slumped in defeat, their faces pale with disbelief. What had started as a dream crushed under bulldozers had transformed into a monumental victory for preservation. In the days that followed, the fallout for the HOA was swift and severe. Faced with crippling fines, lawsuits from disgruntled condo buyers, and irreparable damage to their reputation, the organization dissolved entirely. Board members resigned in disgrace, and local officials scrambled to address the mess left behind. Mayor Linda Hayes held a press conference announcing plans to repurpose the land as an educational hub focused on paleontology and conservation. "We owe it to Dr. Carter and to future generations to make this right," she declared. For Emily, the victory was bittersweet. Yes, she had saved the fossils, but the scars of the battle lingered. She thought about the countless hours spent fighting, the sleepless nights, the moments when she doubted herself. Yet looking out at the volunteers working tirelessly at the dig site, she realized something profound. This wasn't just her story anymore. It belonged to everyone who had stood beside her, who had believed in the importance of protecting history. As she walked among the fossils, brushing away layers of dirt to reveal ancient bones, Emily allowed herself a rare smile. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Transforming the site into a museum and research center would require years of effort, but she was ready. After all, she had already proven that perseverance and integrity could overcome even the most daunting odds. And deep down, she knew the fossils weren't just relics of the past, they were symbols of hope for the future. The victory in court was a monumental step, but Emily knew the real work was just beginning. The judge's ruling had halted construction and designated the fossil site as federally protected land, but the scars left by the HOA's actions ran deep. Half-built condos loomed like ghosts over the landscape, their skeletal frames jutting awkwardly against the natural beauty of the desert. These structures weren't just eyesores, they were symbols of greed and disregard for history. Now, Emily faced the daunting task of figuring out what to do with them. Local officials approached her soon after the verdict, seeking guidance on how to move forward. Mayor Linda Hayes invited Emily to a town hall meeting where residents could voice their opinions about repurposing the abandoned development. The room buzzed with energy as people debated ideas ranging from demolishing the condos entirely to converting them into educational facilities. Some argued that tearing everything down would send a clear message about prioritizing preservation over profit. Others believed renovating the existing structures could serve as a compromise, a way to honor progress while respecting the past. Emily listened intently, weighing each suggestion carefully. She understood the importance of finding a solution that balanced practicality with principle. After much deliberation, she proposed transforming the area into an expansive paleontological preserve and research center. The half-finished condos could be retrofitted into classrooms, laboratories, and visitor centers, creating a unique blend of modern functionality and historical significance. This idea resonated deeply with the community, earning widespread support from scientists, educators, and even former Serenity Ridge buyers who saw it as a chance to redeem the project. With funding secured through government grants, private donations, and crowdfunding campaigns, the transformation began. Teams of architects, engineers, and designers worked alongside paleontologists to reimagine the space. What had once been marketed as luxury living became a hub of learning and discovery. Walls originally intended to house families were repurposed into interactive exhibits showcasing fossils, geological formations, and ancient ecosystems. Rooftop terraces designed for lounging now served as observation decks offering panoramic views of the preserved landscape below. Emily threw herself into the project with boundless enthusiasm. Every day brought new challenges, coordinating logistics, overseeing renovations, and ensuring the integrity of the fossil site remained intact, but also moments of pure joy. Watching children marvel at dinosaur skeletons or hearing students discuss career aspirations in paleontology reminded her why this fight had been worth every ounce of effort. Even the workers who had once operated bulldozers near her dig site joined the effort, trading hard hats for hammers as they helped build something meaningful instead of destructive. As the preserve took shape, so did its reputation. Word spread quickly about the groundbreaking discoveries being made there. Researchers from around the world flocked to study the fossils, collaborating on projects that pushed the boundaries of scientific understanding. One team identified a previously unknown species of marine reptile, sparking international headlines. Another group used advanced imaging technology to reconstruct the appearance of plants that thrived millions of years ago, shedding light on Earth's ancient climates. Each breakthrough added layers to humanity's collective knowledge, proving that the past still held invaluable lessons for the present and future. To ensure accessibility, Emily advocated for programs aimed at engaging underserved communities. Schools in low-income areas received free field trips, complete with guided tours and hands-on activities. Scholarships funded internships for aspiring scientists, many of whom came from backgrounds traditionally underrepresented in STEM fields. A traveling exhibit brought replicas of key fossils to libraries, museums, and community centers across the country, allowing people who couldn't visit the preserve to experience its wonders firsthand. Despite the successes, Emily occasionally found herself reflecting on the journey that led her here. Late at night, when the preserve was quiet and the stars stretched endlessly above, she'd walk among the fossils, tracing their ancient contours with her fingers. She thought about the battles fought, the allies gained, and the lives touched along the way. There were times when she doubted whether standing up to the HOA was worth the toll it took on her personally, but seeing the impact of her efforts, the smiles of curious children, the awestruck expressions of visitors, the camaraderie among researchers, reminded her that every struggle had been worthwhile. One evening, during the grand opening ceremony of the Carter Paleontological Preserve, Emily stood before a crowd of thousands. Local dignitaries, scientists, and supporters filled the outdoor amphitheater, their faces glowing in the warm light of sunset. As she stepped up to the podium, applause erupted, echoing across the desert like rolling thunder. When the cheers subsided, Emily spoke from the heart. "This place is more than just a museum or a research center," she said, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "It's a testament to the power of perseverance, collaboration, and belief in something greater than ourselves. It reminds us that progress doesn't have to come at the expense of our planet's history, that we can build a better future without erasing the past. Her words resonated deeply, drawing tears from some and nods of agreement from others. When she finished speaking, the audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering long after she stepped away from the microphone. For Emily, it wasn't just validation. It was affirmation that the fight had been worth it. In the months and years that followed, the preserve flourished. Visitors streamed in daily, eager to explore its exhibits and learn about Earth's incredible history. Schools incorporated field trips into their curriculums, and universities established partnerships to conduct ongoing research. The ruins of Serenity Ridge, once symbols of conflict, became reminders of resilience and redemption. And Emily, standing amidst it all, felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing she had turned a tragedy into triumph, not just for herself, but for everyone who believed in the value of preserving our shared heritage. Years had passed since the day Emily Carter stood in a dusty desert, staring at the destruction wrought by bulldozers. What began as a personal fight to save her fossil site had grown into something far greater, a legacy that touched lives across the globe. The Carter Paleontological Preserve was no longer just a name, it was a beacon of hope, education, and inspiration for people of all ages. Visitors came from every corner of the world to marvel at its exhibits, participate in workshops, and witness firsthand the wonders hidden beneath layers of rock and time. The preserve sprawled across acres of protected land, blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. Once abandoned condos now housed state-of-the-art laboratories where researchers worked tirelessly to unlock the secrets of prehistoric life. Interactive displays allowed guests to step back millions of years, immersing themselves in ancient ecosystems through virtual reality experiences. Schoolchildren giggled as they pieced together replica fossils at outdoor dig sites, their imaginations ignited by stories of dinosaurs, mammoths, and other long-extinct creatures. For many, these visits sparked lifelong passions for science and exploration. At the heart of the preserve stood a towering glass atrium, home to the centerpiece exhibit, a nearly complete skeleton of a newly discovered dinosaur species named Carteria rex after Emily herself. The discovery had made headlines worldwide, earning praise not only for its scientific importance but also as a symbol of resilience. Each bone told a story, not just of Earth's distant past, but of humanity's ability to come together to protect what matters most. Emily had become more than a scientist. She was a role model. Her journey inspired countless young minds to pursue careers in paleontology, environmental science, and conservation. She spoke at conferences, wrote books, and appeared on television shows sharing her story with anyone who would listen. Yet despite her fame, she remained deeply connected to the preserve, often leading tours and mentoring students. To her, the real reward wasn't recognition. It was seeing others embrace the same curiosity and passion that had driven her all those years ago. The impact of the preserve extended beyond its gates. It became a hub for global research collaborations, bringing together experts from diverse fields to tackle questions about climate change, biodiversity loss, and sustainable development. By studying ancient ecosystems, scientists gained insights into how modern environments might respond to similar challenges. Lessons learned at the preserve informed policies aimed at protecting endangered species, restoring damaged habitats, and mitigating the effects of human activity on fragile ecosystems. For the local community, the transformation was equally profound. Jobs created by the preserve revitalized the economy, replacing the failed Serenity Ridge project with opportunities rooted in education and preservation. Former construction workers found new purpose-building trails, maintaining facilities, and guiding tours. Artists and entrepreneurs opened shops and galleries near the preserve, catering to the steady stream of visitors. The town, once overshadowed by controversy, blossomed into a vibrant destination celebrated for its commitment to history and innovation. Even the remnants of Serenity Ridge served as powerful reminders of the lessons learned. Signs posted near the ruins explained the story behind the abandoned condos, the greed, the legal battles, and ultimately the redemption. They encouraged visitors to reflect on the choices societies make and the responsibility we bear to future generations. Progress, one sign read, isn't measured by what we build, but by what we choose to protect. On quiet evenings, Emily liked to sit atop a hill overlooking the preserve, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The golden light bathed the landscape in warmth, casting long shadows over the fossils and structures below. She thought about the countless hours spent fighting for this place, the sleepless nights, the moments of doubt, the victories and setbacks. But more than anything, she thought about the people who had joined her along the way. Marcus, whose legal expertise turned the tide in her favor. Harold, the retired geology professor who offered wisdom and encouragement. Rachel, the journalist whose articles brought attention to the cause. And the thousands of strangers who rallied behind her, believing in something bigger than themselves. Her mind wandered to the fossils buried beneath her feet, silent witnesses to eons of change. They reminded her of the fragility of life and the enduring power of perseverance. History, she realized, wasn't just something to be studied, it was something to be lived. Every decision, every action, added another layer to the story of humanity's relationship with the planet. As twilight settled over the desert, Emily smiled softly. The battle scars still lingered, the half-built condos, the memories of lost fossils, but they were outweighed by the beauty that had emerged from the ashes. The preserve wasn't just a monument to prehistory, it was a testament to the strength of unity, the courage to stand up for what's right, and the belief that even the smallest voices can spark monumental change. In the end, Emily understood that her fight hadn't been about stopping progress, it had been about redefining it. Progress didn't mean paving over the past, it meant honoring it, learning from it, and using it to create a better future. As stars began to twinkle in the night sky, she felt a deep sense of peace knowing that the preserve would continue to inspire long after she was gone. After all, some legacies are written not in ink or stone, but in the hearts of those who carry the torch forward.